Sarah Martinez was cleaning table 12 when she saw it. A brown leather wallet. Elegant, heavy, left behind by an elderly gentleman who'd just left. She opened it. $3,000 in cash, credit cards, an ID Robert Miller. She didn't recognize the name, but her instinct was immediate. The man had left 5 minutes ago. Maybe he was still nearby. So she grabbed the wallet and ran, out the door, into the street, hoping to catch him. She didn't think about consequences, didn't calculate what someone might think seeing her run out with a wallet full of money. She just wanted to do the right thing. But Joe Richards, the restaurant owner, saw her, running out, wallet in hand. His mind made an immediate connection. When Sarah came back minutes later, disappointed, unable to find the man, Joe was waiting. His face red with rage, and he screamed one word that changed everything. Thief! He fired her on the spot, in front of everyone, for trying to return a wallet. What Sarah didn't know, that wallet belonged to one of America's richest billionaires. And inside wasn't just money. It was the only photo he had of his dead grandson, the only memory left. And when Robert Miller came back looking for his wallet, discovered what happened, and found Sarah, he didn't just thank her. He made her his heir, $500 million. Because sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything, until it gives you more than you ever imagined. Sarah Martinez never imagined that returning a forgotten wallet would condemn her to immediate dismissal. At 24 years old, this young waitress had worked at Joe's Diner in Manhattan for 3 years, living on minimum wage in a studio apartment in Queens. When she found a premium leather wallet full of bills on table number 12, her first instinct was correct: run after the elderly customer to return it. But the restaurant owner, Joe Richards, saw her leave with the wallet in hand and drew the wrong conclusions. Thief! He yelled at her in front of all the customers, firing her on the spot. Sarah tried to explain the truth, but no one believed her. She didn't know the wallet belonged to Robert Miller, one of America's most powerful billionaires. And she couldn't imagine that a few hours later, that man would show up at the restaurant to personally thank the angel who had saved him much more than $3,000. Sarah Martinez was cleaning table number 12 when she saw it. Brown leather wallet, elegant and heavy, forgotten on the chair where an elderly, distinguished gentleman had been sitting just moments before. It was Thursday night. Joe's Diner in the heart of the Lower East Side was closing after an intense day, and coworkers were already placing chairs on tables to allow for cleaning. At 24 years old, Sarah had worked as a waitress for 3 years at that characteristic establishment frequented by tourists and New Yorkers. She lived on a salary that barely allowed her to pay rent for the studio in Queens she shared with her roommate Lisa. But she never complained. She was a cheerful girl, always kind to customers, punctual, and honest to the core. The wallet looked expensive, authentic American leather. Sarah opened it to look for a document that would allow her to identify the owner. What she saw left her breathless. Bills of $50 and $100, at least $3,000 in cash, several credit cards, and an ID card in the name of Robert Miller. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it. Sarah's instinct was immediate and natural. The elderly gentleman had left barely 5 minutes before. Perhaps he was still nearby. She grabbed the wallet and ran toward the exit, hoping to catch him on the street. She didn't think about the consequences, didn't calculate what someone who saw her might think. She only thought about doing the right thing. But Joe Richards, the restaurant owner, saw her running out with the wallet in hand. Joe was a 50-year-old man, cynical and distrustful, who had seen too many employees try to scam him over the years. When he saw Sarah escaping with what appeared to be a wallet full of money, his mind made an immediate and devastating connection. Sarah returned after a few minutes, panting and disappointed. She hadn't managed to find the gentleman. The street was full of tourists and locals, and he had already disappeared. She entered the restaurant again with the intention of handing the wallet to the owner, hoping the customer would return to look for it. But Joe was waiting for her with his face red with rage and eyes full of indignation. Behind him were the other waiters and the cook, all stopped, watching the scene that was about to explode. Joe's words resonated throughout the restaurant like a condemnation. He accused her of being a thief, of having tried to steal a customer's wallet. He shouted that he had seen her leave with the money, that he had always known she couldn't be trusted. Sarah desperately tried to explain the truth. She told about the forgotten wallet, the attempt to catch the owner, her intention to deliver it precisely to Joe. but her words fell on deaf ears. Joe had already made his decision, influenced by prejudice and distrust. The dismissal was immediate and brutal. Joe told her to get her things and leave immediately, that he didn't want to see thieves in his restaurant. Sarah found herself on the street with the wallet still in her hand, fired for having tried to do the right thing. The customers present had witnessed the scene, whispering among themselves. Some seemed uncertain, as if they didn't completely believe Joe's version, but no one intervened in Sarah's defense. She was just another waitress against a respected owner, and in those situations, the young woman always lost. Sarah walked through the streets of the Lower East Side with tears in her eyes, and Robert Miller's wallet weighing in her purse like a stone. She had lost her job for having tried to do the right thing. She felt stupid, naive, punished for her honesty. Upon arriving home, she sat on the bed and looked at the wallet again. Inside was an ID that confirmed the name, Robert Miller, 72 years old, resident of Manhattan. There were family photos, business cards from important companies, and all that money Joe thought she wanted to steal. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed thinking about the injustice suffered, the lost job, the bills to pay. But above all, she thought about the wallet she absolutely had to return, because despite everything that had happened to her, Sarah Martinez was an honest person. And honest people always do the right thing, even when the world seems to punish them for it. She didn't know that Robert Miller was one of the richest and most powerful men in America, and she couldn't imagine that the next day her life would change forever. Robert Miller realized the wallet was lost only the next day, when he tried to pay for breakfast at the coffee shop below his office in Midtown Manhattan. At 72 years old, he was still an imposing and lucid man, with perfectly combed white hair and blue eyes that had seen financial empires built and fall. Panic immediately invaded him. In that wallet, there wasn't just $3,000 in cash, but also confidential documents, access codes, and above all, the only photo he had of his grandson Marcus, dead in a car accident 3 months earlier. That photo was the only tangible memory he had left of the boy he considered a son. Robert had built an empire in real estate and investments, but in recent years, loneliness was consuming him. His wife had died 10 years ago. His only son had emigrated to Argentina to escape his father's shadow, and the only grandson who still gave him joy of living had left forever. That morning, he immediately called his personal assistant, Dr. Harrison, ordering him to trace all the places visited the day before. Robert vaguely remembered having dined at a diner in the Lower East Side, but couldn't remember the exact name. Harrison got to work, calling all the diners in the area, describing Robert, asking if anyone had found a wallet. Most establishments responded negatively. Others said they would verify and call back. Sarah, meanwhile, was living through one of the most difficult days of her life. She had woken up unemployed, with rent to pay in a week and no immediate prospects. She had spent the morning at the computer searching for job offers, but available positions were few and poorly paid. Robert's wallet rested on her studio desk like a constant reproach. Sarah knew she had to return it, but didn't know how to contact the owner. She didn't have the courage to return to Joe's diner. After the humiliation of the previous day, she decided to do online searches. The name Robert Miller hadn't meant anything initially, but a quick Google search left her astonished. Pages and pages of results. Robert Miller, real estate magnate, the billionaire who changed Manhattan's skyline. Robert Miller donates $100 million to charity. Sarah realized she had found the wallet of one of America's richest men. This made her even more nervous. How could an unemployed waitress present herself at a billionaire's door? Who would believe her? That afternoon, Robert went personally to the diners in the Lower East Side. Despite his wealth, he was a simple man in human relations who preferred to personally manage important matters. He arrived at Joe's diner around 5 p.m., immediately recognizing the establishment where he had dined. Joe Richards almost fainted seeing Robert Miller enter. He had immediately recognized the neighborhood's richest man, an occasional but always generous customer. When Robert explained he had lost his wallet the night before, Joe lit up with pride and a servile smile. Joe told his version of events. He explained how he had discovered a dishonest waitress trying to steal the wallet, how he had fired her immediately to protect customers. He boasted about his speed in preventing the theft and his moral integrity. Robert listened with growing perplexity. Something in the story didn't add up. If the waitress was stealing the wallet, where had it ended up? Joe couldn't give a satisfactory answer. He began to stammer confused excuses and justifications. It was the cook, an honest man named Antonio, who told the truth. He couldn't bear the injustice he had seen committed. He told Robert how Sarah had run out to return the wallet, how she had returned disappointed at not finding the owner, how she had been unjustly fired for an act of honesty. Robert felt his blood boil. This despicable man had ruined an honest girl's life because of his prejudices. He immediately asked for Sarah's address, and when Joe tried to refuse, Robert made a call that in 5 minutes brought the NYPD to the restaurant. Joe understood he had made an irreparable mistake. Not only had he unjustly fired an honest employee, but he had also lied to the most powerful customer he had ever had. His reputation and his restaurant were in danger. Robert took Sarah's address and left the restaurant, leaving Joe to reflect on the consequences of his actions. As he got into his black Mercedes, Robert thought about the young waitress who had sacrificed her job to return his wallet. It had been a long time since he had met a truly honest person. That afternoon, Robert Miller headed toward Queens with an emotion he hadn't felt in years. The curiosity to meet someone who could restore his faith in humanity. Sarah heard the doorbell ring at 8 p.m. and found herself at the door with Robert Miller in person. The elegant elderly man she recognized from internet photos was there, on the threshold of her modest Queens apartment. Her heart stopped. She let him in with trembling hands. The contrast was striking. One of America's richest men in her 400-square-foot studio, with cheap furniture and walls needing paint. Robert looked around without judging, more interested in her than in the environment. Sarah took the wallet from the desk and handed it to him, apologizing for the delay. Robert opened it, checked the contents, then took out the photo of his grandson. His eyes filled with tears, caressing the image of the boy. The story Robert told was heartbreaking. Marcus was his only grandson, who came to visit every summer. That photo was from their last moment together. The boy had died 3 months ago in a car accident, and that photo was the only tangible memory left. Sarah immediately understood why he was so grateful. It wasn't the money that mattered, but that irreplaceable memory. Robert asked her why she had risked her job to return the wallet. Sarah responded that it was the right thing. Her mother had taught her that honesty is the only wealth no one can steal. Then Robert told her the truth about the restaurant. Joe had lied. He had described her as a thief, had tried to take credit for preventing the theft. Sarah listened, hurt, but not surprised by her ex-boss's pettiness. Robert was furious about the injustice suffered. When he discovered she was unemployed, he made a decision that changed everything. Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue with the video. He offered her the position of dining room manager at the Cardinal, his most prestigious restaurant, with triple salary compared to the previous one. Sarah couldn't believe it. It was too good to be true. Robert explained it wasn't charity, but recognition of merit. Finding someone with her values was as valuable as finding a diamond. That night, Robert stayed 3 hours at her house. Sarah prepared coffee with her cheap coffee maker, and Robert drank it as if it were the best of his life. They talked about families, dreams, disappointments. Robert discovered she was studying economics at Knight University. When he left, Sarah felt her life had just begun. Robert, driving home, realized it had been months since he felt so alive. That waitress with pure values had reminded him that good people still existed, and perhaps he had found someone who could fill the void left by the loss of his grandson. Sarah's first day at the Cardinal restaurant was like entering a completely different world. The establishment was located near Times Square, with elegant decoration, precious glassware, and clientele that included politicians, actors, and international business people. Robert personally accompanied her, introducing her to staff as the new dining room manager. Experienced waiters received her with curiosity. It was unusual for the owner to personally interest himself in an employee's training. Sarah felt intimidated at first. She was accustomed to the chaos of Joe's diner, where customers were tourists looking for cheap burgers. Here, every detail mattered. Every gesture had to be perfect. But her natural kindness quickly won over colleagues and clientele. Robert often stopped by the establishment to observe Sarah working. He was fascinated by her ability to transform service into an art, to make even the simplest gesture special. Between them was born a special relationship, with lunches during breaks where Robert shared his business experience. Sarah discovered that behind the image of the cold billionaire was a lonely man, wounded by losses, but still capable of generosity. Robert told her how he had built his empire, lost his wife to illness, ruined the relationship with his son because of work. 1 month after hiring, Robert made an extraordinary proposal. He wanted to pay for her university studies and train her in business management. He had in mind to open a new restaurant chain, and he wanted her to direct it. Sarah was overwhelmed by the generosity but worried about others' judgment. Robert explained that the world is full of envious people, but what counts is a clean conscience. He had recognized in her rare qualities: honesty, intelligence, dedication. Robert began taking her to business meetings, teaching her business secrets. Sarah absorbed everything like a sponge, studying every mechanism of the business world. At night they stayed talking. He told anecdotes from his career. She talked about her dreams. Robert had found in Sarah the daughter fate hadn't given him. Sarah had found in Robert the father lost as a child, and the mentor every young person dreams of having. Both had filled a void in each other's life. But Joe Richards was about to discover how much it can cost to misjudge a person. Joe Richards realized the disaster when it was already too late. Joe's diner had started losing customers from the day after Sarah's dismissal. Regular customers didn't show up. Online reviews were negative. Suppliers demanded advance payments. The final blow came with the visit from the labor inspector. Robert Miller had filed a complaint for wrongful termination. Joe had no documentation proving just cause, and the inspector didn't believe his version. The fine was severe, $50,000 plus compensation to Sarah. The situation worsened when Joe discovered who Robert Miller really was, one of America's most powerful billionaires, with a network of influences extending throughout Manhattan's restaurant sector. One negative word from him meant ruin. Joe desperately tried to remedy the situation, calling Robert to apologize. But the billionaire categorically refused to see him. He had no interest in talking to a man without honesty or justice. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her extraordinary ascent. Robert had enrolled her in a business management master's program, and she studied with total passion. Her grades were excellent. Professors noticed her determination. Robert's new project was taking shape, a chain of elegant but accessible restaurants. Sarah would be the general manager. Robert also had another secret plan. He wanted her to inherit part of his companies. Having no children willing to continue his work, he had found in Sarah the perfect heir. Sarah had transformed the Cardinal into Manhattan's most sought-after restaurant, with reservations for months. Her story had gone around the city. The honest waitress turned billionaire's protege, a symbol of hope for those who believe honesty is rewarded. Robert looked at Sarah with the affection of a proud father. He had done the right thing that day when he decided to search for her. Not only had he recovered the photo of his grandson, but he had found someone who gave meaning to his life. Destiny had punished Joe for his injustice and rewarded Sarah for her honesty. But it had also given Robert an unexpected gift, a reason to keep living. 2 years after that fateful day at Joe's diner, Sarah Martinez's life was completely transformed. She had completed the master's with honors, successfully managed the new Casa Miller restaurant chain, and lived in an elegant apartment in downtown Manhattan that Robert had given her for her birthday. But the deepest change didn't concern work or money. It concerned the family she had found in Robert. What had begun as gratitude had transformed into deep and reciprocal filial affection. Robert had found in his protege the daughter he never had, and Sarah had found in him the father and mentor she had always desired. Robert had made official what everyone already knew. Sarah would be his universal heir. Half of his empire, valued at over $500 million, would be for her. The other half would be donated to charity, as Robert had always planned to do. The news had caused a stir in business newspapers. The restaurant Cinderella inherits an empire, titled The New York Times. From humble waitress to billionaire, Sarah Martinez's fairy tale, wrote the Wall Street Journal. But for Sarah and Robert, those headlines didn't matter. What counted was the bond they had built day by day, made of mutual respect, sincere affection, and shared values. Robert had taught Sarah not only how to manage a company, but how to be a just and generous leader. Sarah had learned the lesson. When Robert began having health problems, she took care of him with a daughter's dedication. She accompanied him to medical visits, made sure he took his medicines, made him laugh by telling funny episodes from the restaurant. One spring evening, while they were sitting on the terrace of Robert's apartment overlooking Manhattan, he gave her the most beautiful surprise. He had reconnected with his son in Argentina. After years of silence, Lorenzo had called to reconcile with his father. The loss of grandson Marcus had made them both reflect on how important family was. Lorenzo would return to America to meet Sarah, the woman his father described as the daughter destiny gave me. Robert was happy, as he hadn't been seen in years. His family was recomposing, enriched by Sarah's presence. When Lorenzo arrived in Manhattan, the meeting was emotional. He was a 45-year-old man who looked a lot like his father, with the same blue eyes and natural elegance. Initially, he had been suspicious of Sarah, thinking she was an opportunist interested only in the inheritance. But a few days were enough to understand he was wrong. Sarah treated Robert with genuine love, took care of him without interest, made him smile with her spontaneity. Lorenzo understood this girl had truly saved his father from loneliness and sadness. The three became an unusual but happy family. Lorenzo decided to move permanently to America to be near his father in his final years. Sarah became the bridge between father and son, helping them recover lost time. Robert lived another 3 years, the most beautiful years of his old age. He saw Sarah marry a good doctor she met during one of her numerous charitable initiatives. He saw the birth of her first child, a boy they named Marcus in honor of the lost grandson. He saw his company grow under Sarah's wise guidance, who had known how to combine economic success with social responsibility. When Robert died at 77 years old in his bed, surrounded by Sarah and Lorenzo's affection, he had the smile of a man who had lived fully. On the nightstand was still that photo of grandson Marcus that Sarah had helped save, next to a new photo of little Marcus, the boy who carried forward his name and memory. The funeral was an event that stopped Manhattan. Thousands of people participated to pay homage to a man who had known how to build wealth without losing humanity. Sarah, dressed in black but with eyes full of gratitude more than pain, gave a speech that moved everyone present. She told how a simple gesture of honesty, returning a forgotten wallet, had changed the lives of 2 lonely people, transforming them into a family. She spoke about the importance of always doing the right thing, even when it seems the world punishes you for it. Joe Richards, who had followed the story through newspapers, had gone bankrupt 2 years earlier. His restaurant had closed, and he had learned too late the cost of injustice. Watching television broadcasting Robert's funeral, he cried for the lost opportunity and the lesson learned too late. Sarah inherited the Miller Empire, as the will established. But the most precious thing Robert had left her were his teachings. She continued managing companies, with the same spirit of justice and generosity she had learned from him. She created a foundation in Robert's memory that helped honest but unfortunate young people realize their dreams. Each year she awarded scholarships to waiters, baristas, workers who demonstrated the same values that had made her story special. At night, when she put little Marcus to bed, Sarah always told him the same story, the one about the forgotten wallet that changed an honest young waitress's life. It was the most beautiful story she knew, because it was her story. And when the boy asked why the waitress grandmother had returned all that money, Sarah smiled and responded with the words Robert had taught her. Because honest people always do the right thing, even when it seems no one is watching. Because honesty is the only wealth no one can steal from you. Little Marcus listened with the same blue eyes as great-grandfather Robert, and Sarah knew that one day he too would do the right thing, continuing the chain of goodness that a forgotten wallet had begun so many years before. Like if you believe honesty is always rewarded sooner or later, Comment which choice in the story impacted you most. Share to inspire those who think doing the right thing serves no purpose. Subscribe for more stories of honest people who change the world. Sometimes a small gesture of honesty can change 2 lives forever. Sometimes those who punish you for doing the right thing receive the lesson they deserve. And sometimes the most beautiful families are born when pure hearts recognize each other. Because honesty is always the right choice, even when it costs dearly.